Well, hey there, and welcome back to Heimler's History. Now, we've been going through Unit 7 of the AP U.S. History curriculum, and in this video and the next, we're going to be talking about World War I. So if you're ready to get them brain cows milked trench foot style, then let's get to it. So in this video, we're going to be talking about World War I proper, with all the fighting and the diplomatic efforts, and then in the next video, we'll talk about what was happening on the home front as the war progressed. So the war itself erupted in Europe in July of 1914 after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and very quickly, two coalitions formed against one another. On one side, you had the Triple Entente, which included Britain, Russia, and France, known in the war as the Allied powers. On the other side was the Triple Alliance, which included Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, known in the war as the Central Powers. And as these players began to blow each other up in massive numbers, the United States held to its traditional stance of neutrality with respect to European conflict. However, several events made it dang near impossible for the US to stay out of the war. First was the sinking of the Lusitania in 1915. Now, Germans had the nasty habit of using submarines to sink any ship, military or otherwise, that entered the war zone around the British Isles. And in that year, a passenger ship called the Lusitania entered said war zone, and the Germans did what Germans do and sunk it. Now, most of the civilian passengers aboard the ship were killed, including 128 Americans, and this enraged the American public, not least President Woodrow Wilson, but neutrality was still maintained. However, the Germans kept sinking ships, and the US threatened to break diplomatic relations with Germany, which, in case you're not up to date on international diplomacy, is the step you take right before you declare war. And Germany could see that it would be disastrous for them if the US entered the war, so they backed off. The second event, or in this case set of events that threatened US neutrality, was really just an extension of the last one, which is to say German unrestricted submarine warfare. So Germany cooled off for a couple of years from sinking ships, but in the end they just couldn't help themselves. Oh, just look at that ship, it's just so tasty, I just want to blow it up. Oh! And so they started sinking all ships that entered the war zone yet again, and there were some of them that were American ships, but old Woodrow kept it together and stayed neutral. But then the final event that crushed any hopes of US neutrality was the interception of the Zimmerman telegram. So Germany wasn't dumb, like they could see that their ship sinking policies were about to draw the United States into the war, and so they could decide to stop sinking ships, but want to blow it up. Oh! So instead, Germany hatched another plan. The Zimmerman telegram was a note sent to Mexico which solicited them to start a war with the United States. But we already had a war with the United States. And when the conflict in Europe was done, Germany would help Mexico regain its land lost in the Mexican-American War. But whatever would have come of that arrangement, we'll never know, because the US intercepted that telegram and discovered Germany's hostile intention towards them. And so with that, Woodrow Wilson asked Congress for a declaration of war against Germany, and they granted it on April 2nd, 1917. And he really just asked Congress to acknowledge that there was a state of war already existing between Germany and the United States, and he said that the US must go to war in order to make the world safe for democracy. Now, the war itself is only going to last for another 20 months, and so the US is really only going to play a limited role in the war overall. The American Expeditionary Forces, commanded by John Pershing, at first just plugged up weaknesses on the French and British lines. But soon hundreds of thousands of American troops showed up and basically took over command of a portion of the western front of the war. And so it's true that the American Expeditionary Forces played a more limited role in the war compared to their allies, but what's beyond doubt is that US entry effectively tipped the balance of the war in favor of the Allies. Now, the war officially ended on November 11th, 1918 with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, and Woodrow Wilson was deeply involved and invested in the outcome of this treaty. Remember, his whole argument for going to war in the first place was to make the world safe for democracy, and he knew that he had his work cut out for him because Britain, and especially France, had vengeance in their hearts against Germany. They wanted Germany to suffer for having started the war, but Wilson could see that a stable Europe required a robust Germany, and so vengeance would not do. And so in these negotiations, Wilson laid out a vision for a post-war world which was known as the 14 Points. The points included, but were not limited to, provisions for the freedom of the seas and the self-determination of nations. Maybe the most significant provision was the establishment of a League of Nations, which would be a worldwide representative body where countries could negotiate their problems instead of going to war. And Wilson fought tirelessly for this things, but in a strange moment of fate, Wilson actually came down with the Spanish flu while he was in France, and it ravaged his body and mind. He was forced to be absent from many of the proceedings, and eventually his will to fight dwindled along with his health. And so Britain and France got what they wanted and punished Germany in the treaty. But don't worry, I'm sure that won't come back to bite them.
Awkward.
However, the League of Nations was in fact created, much to Wilson's joy, but when he returned to the U.S. and presented the treaty to Congress, they refused to ratify it with the stipulation for the League of Nations. Since Congress has the constitutional authority to declare war, they feared that membership in such a body would drag the United States into war without congressional approval. And so the League was formed, but without the nation of its birth. Alright, that's what you need to know about Unit 7, Topic 5 of the AP U.S. History curriculum. And if you need help getting an A in your class and a 5 in your exam in May, then click right here and grab a review package. If you were helped by this video and want me to keep making them, then the way you let me know that is by subscribing, and you know me, I shall oblige. Heimler out.